Welcome to the Gain Momentum podcast, focusing on timeless lessons from senior leaders in hospitality, travel, food service, and technology. I'm joined by Luka Berger, founder of Flexkeeping. Luka, how's it going? Big week.
Be here, Adam. Awesome to be here. Awesome to see you again. Huh?
Yeah,
Hasn't been long. Yeah.
it's been 2 weeks or so since I saw you in person, which is just an amazing part of hospitality is that you can meet up with very cool and smart people around the world. And this is a big week for you because we are recording October 3rd, 2025. And earlier this week, as per what's in your background, it was announced that Flexkeeping was acquired by Mews. So that is a big thing that we have to touch on. But first, let's start with the elevator pitch for Flexkeeping.
Yeah. Now, so my elevator pitch needs to go 13 years back, Adam, because it's almost exactly 13 years back when I ended up my summer job as a housekeeper in Yellowstone National Park in the US. And this is how I got into hospitality. I was a housekeeper for a summer. This is where I saw how operations are set up and how much struggle we had in operations since we were organized with pen and paper and walkie-talkies. So I was just looking around that summer. I was looking at my housekeeping manager walking all day around the hotel to meet to other housekeepers, calling over her radio to the front office. It was just so much of losing time, not knowing who did what. It lasted 4 hours to get guests checked in and all those sorts of stuff. And the idea that popped into my mind back then was, well, we already had smartphones, so why not make a simple app that would connect all of the staff members together, housekeepers, front office, maintenance first, and all the others rest later. And that's how we later created Flexkeeping. So the idea was, let's make something easy to connect staff working in hotels to enable better guest services at the end of the day, to get guests checked in faster, to get data on operations, to improve that data and just create better hospitality. And that's how the story was born. That's what we still do today with Flexkeeping. What we ended up doing is way more than housekeeping. We ended up building a platform that covers literally all operations, that is really out to drive strategic value for operations of all sizes. And here we are, roughly 1,000 hotels around the world, 80 countries. And yeah, with great news this week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And nowadays, given the macro forces in hospitality of labor being more expensive and also short in terms of supply, this is making service optimization systems, a sauce, essential to operations. So, can you tell us about some of the more modern ways that a sauce is adding value beyond simply the digitalization of moving away from paper and pen?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I mean, if you look at it from a macro perspective, the big macro problem of hospitality is staffing. So we all that are in the industry feel it and see it. Even guests can see it, that staff is just there's less and less of it. Even I was a member, kind of let's try to resolve the staffing problem back in 2012 with the J1 visa program, if we're honest about it. But like 13 years later, the problem is just huge. So one of the main aspects that a optimization system like us is tapping into is to, with all the optimizations that we will be doing, with all the automations we will be doing, the number one thing is to take away the time that is wasted on admin stuff. We're just looking for information, just wasting stuff on things like that, and then relieving and releasing ops people to actually do the job. So that's the thing number one. So you should need less staff and do more with the staff that you have. The other things that are super important here is that the impact on you having data and being able to manage your property actually data driven is the second thing that happens with us. So because one important thing that we produce is information on every single thing that's being done in operations, and then later on you can analyze that and actually improve, if that's quality, if that's service speed, if that's training of staff, etc. And that this ultimately impacts your end profitability. or any other aspect that you want to drive for your business. So I think that beyond the optimization of processes, it's data that you should be really looking for, because that enables you then to drive any other success factor in your business. So I think those are the two macro aspects that are most important for sure.
Well, yeah, data is the new oil. And I really want to drill into that because when we met in Ljubljana, you mentioned something that's very powerful. We're going to get to that. But first, let's talk about the city itself.
Yeah.
Most tech companies, they're either in the US, Texas, New York, Miami, London, Paris, and Europe. You're in Ljubljana, Slovenia. Beautiful southern Alp, the Julian Alps, the Southern Alps. Why there, and what advantages are there to having a tech company in sort of a smaller European city?
Well, the why is very simple because we're born here. That's the why, right? So we are pure 100% Slovenes, me and Aljaž, who is my co-founder. And that's the first thing. So we haven't ever really seriously looked at options to not do it here, right? So the one super good thing about our country is that it's geographically super good positioned. So we are just between Austria, Italy, Croatia, very central European. So you have a few hours to Munich, a few hours to Vienna, a few hours to Venice, and so forth. The other thing is there's so much talent in this region, probably untapped. As well for other companies or in general. And the third, there's great hospitality here. So when we started off developing Flexkeeping, we did predominantly have customers from our regions, which end to be one of the best hospitality companies, if you ask me. So the service level, the service quality is really good. The property sizes are good. There's a lot of resorts. We immediately went into complex operations, into full service operations, where you really learn about hospitality so much. And those are all the aspects that really helped us create the story of Flexkeeping. Um, yeah, through the years. So I think it's a great geolocation to be in, honestly. Next to being super nice, as you know yourself by now.
Oh yeah, it's for anyone who hasn't been to Slovenia, it is a gem. Like it is everything and more for what they say about how good it is. So that part of the world also has a lot of independent hotels and small groups, and these are hotel chains or hotels that really do need service optimization systems. But they're also struggling for budget and resources because they don't necessarily have the corporate overlords to help them sort through why this system is important. So, how does a sauce and flex keeping within that really help independents and small groups to better manage the guest experience and also help derive more value for the business?
So, Adam, I think that it's true that our region is more full of independents and smaller groups, but I think that question is applicable to any size, especially bigger groups as well. The bigger you are, the more it's applicable. Um, So again, one of the basic values of our platform is that it brings out of the box savings and ROI through time savings and cost savings, just for the pure purpose of automation and all the things we've talked about before. So it just saves you all of that immediately out of the box. So any size of property you're running, you do not want to be wasting time on like calls or figuring stuff out, because that's all time that you're not investing either into guests or into just improving your services any way they could be improved, right? So that's number one, and that's irrelevant from the size. Obviously, that benefit does get better as your size gets bigger. Then when we come to groups, this is where the value really starts getting big and just crucial. It's when you need to look at the system being across all of your properties and automating and kind of also monitoring all of your services. This then gives you kind of the insights of what's really happening. And this is again, we're coming into the data part, because what was super hard to understand in the past, especially if you're not digitized in that way, that every action you're doing in operations is actually being executed digitally as well. you now actually can get a bird's eye view into your operations and start benchmarking, start comparing, start finding patterns that lead into, higher quality, lower productivity, whatever that is. You can start getting smarter. You can start going from like, okay, what's my number one problem in whichever department, let's say maintenance, to, well, like, what's actually driving that problem, which are the dynamics, what's the guest segment that's attributed to it, what are the trends, in staffing and stuff like that. So this is really where this gets super valuable. And then any mid-size, any company. So again, like, I think this is it's not attached to a size of the hotel. It does get more frequent with the as the size increases of the companies, but you get strategic about driving your operations and your business. Usually, the core 3-4 KPIs of every company are like, okay, we need to be efficient. We want to have staff satisfaction because we want to retain staff, especially as there are no staff. We want to have guest satisfaction as high as possible because that drives all the other business so well. And then we want to drive profitability, of course. And then you might have also ESG and other goals, right? For that, you critically need a system like Flexkeeping in place because that's what actually drives it at the end of the day. So, I mean, wow, Adam, this is so broad and deep and high and everything. So, it's just crucial these days. You cannot operate without a system like Flexkeeping if you want to drive your business the way you want to drive it long term.
Yeah, and this is the whole thing with more so at the group level where you can get more data and benchmark and really get granular with your questions. And really, one fallback I've always heard is that data doesn't necessarily solve your issues, but getting the data allows you to ask better questions as you're going through and really drive down to the why behind behind what is happening.
Data doesn't solve it at all, right? It just might give you an idea why it's even happening so that you can solve it. For sure, for sure. Yeah, but without it, I think you're nowhere if you don't have it. Yeah.
And within that, I remember you mentioned a term uh, that is something that can be done off this, which is activity based costing.
Yeah.
And that's sort of an emerging field within this whole idea of getting granular with your data. Can you unpack what that term means and how it adds value to hotels?
Yeah. So activity-based costing is kind of a thing that is an old theory. I think it stems from production lines back in the day from other types of industries. But to kind of breaking it out very easily, it's about understanding how individual activities in your production line, or in our case, in our operations, kind of contribute to kind of the total cost of your operations. Now, what I think is super interesting and is going to define kind of the future profitability management in hospitality is understanding how activities that we are doing in operations are attributed to guests. And I'm not talking about guest segments at large, like business versus leisure or whatever is the segmentation. I'm talking about a guest like Adam and Luka. How are we two same but different if you're traveling? We might be both business travelers, but then our habits when staying in a room might be totally different, right? So for either one of us, it might be lower, higher maintenance. It might be more or less service orderings. It might be more or less cleaning. And if you are able to collect that, then you're able to also to attribute that, and then ultimately, you would get to the real profitability of me or you, and that might game change completely your revenue management down the road. I think it's one of the most exciting opportunities in the future of profit management in hospitality.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could unpack this some more because it is an incredibly exciting area, but one difficult area within that may be the attribution of everything. Can you unpack how you're able to actually do that?
Um, so the biggest problem in the past in operations was that, especially because it was not digitized. Again, there were no platforms like Flexkeeping and or similar for other departments as well. Is that you don't know exactly what's being done or how much time or resource is being kind of used for it. So the game changer here is that when you are using Flexkeeping for all those operational parts, you understand now every detail, every activity that's being done, from the schedule part to the guest related part. So, for example, if we are super simple and just keep it to housekeeping, you would understand how much time was needed, what was the linens and linen count that was used, what were the shampoos and all that stuff that was being kind of exchanged or topped up, what was the which were the coffees that were drank, etc., etc. You would understand the same dynamics for maintenance and for other services. Um, and this is what then starts enabling you to understand every guest individually because you can attribute it to him or her or that guest. And that then need to add to get to that ultimate profit management. You'll need to add obviously costs from the front office, the spa area, the kitchen, the all of the F&B services, every service that you're actually running in the property. So it's not just the housekeeping part; it's the whole operational aspect of everything. Um, but we're getting there. We're getting there, right? So that's the exciting part. So the data, I think, is here. The next step is now to connect it, and then the next step is to actionalize it on the revenue generation part, which is the point of sale and so forth. So I think it's going to be a game changer, Adam.
Well, I think it already is in a lot of ways, just for using different terminology. And the real um, the game changer, I think, is the connecting of revenues to costs here to get a proper, accurate picture of total profitability, which is something that I've always stood for. And I want to also talk about how activity based costing can be reflected through the context of the guest as that changes over time. So, this is the whole thing that the classic case there would be a corporate guest has a shorter length of stay, so therefore big cost checkout clean, but they're barely using the room versus a family maybe stays longer and you need to do a deep clean every single time there because the rugs are destroyed by kids and all that stuff. So how
Exactly.
could you walk me through that picture of how we can itemize through the lens of activity based costing those two different guest profiles to then be reflected in what a revenue director is doing to cost a product differently for a family versus a corporate hotel guest?
Yeah. So I mean, what you're asking is effectively like, how do you implement that on the sales side? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's the holy grail, right? Not asking for much, just the holy grail.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's easy. That's easy. We can do that. That's what we're here for. Oh, I mean, look. Obviously, so I think that for years, or up until now, the vast majority of focus goes into how do we sell more and how do we sell more efficiently and how do we sell cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where the focus was all the time. I think that the unlocker here is that now operations is coming in, and operations is starting to feed the missing part. Uh, and so, how do you actionize that? Is probably very much down to also what your sales channels are doing today, right? And where your revenue is coming from. So, if you're today probably on, I don't know, let's say 30, 40, 50% OTA, or even more, then you're going to have a harder time actionizing that because I guess, there's probably a limited amount of data you have about the guest that's about to book because you're probably not managing that yourself. But if you are moving up the percentage of I'm going direct, I'm getting guests directly or via my own owned channels. This is, I think, those are the types of businesses that are gonna see the game changing impact as soon as possible. And this is where I've seen already projects. We've been discussing already projects looking at how do we connect those 2 points at the point of sale, at the moment of sale. Um, this is where it gets amazing, and this can be in an email, this can be in a call, it needs to be absolutely supported by good software, good systems, by real-time data collection and data aggregation and all that stuff. And I can tell there are some companies out there, also in our region, that are doing super good job and are just like that only that much away from kind of unlocking the first levels of that. But I'd say I would say that probably the ones that are on a higher percentage of direct sales are the ones that are going to be the early winners for sure. So yeah, I think that's one of the key aspects here, how to control that point of sale to drive that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it ties in nicely to the whole point of service optimization. It's not just about servicing the guest who's coming to you for the first time off the OTA, but making such a good impression through the service that they choose you again and hopefully they book direct. So there is already an inherent connection between service optimization and direct channel, which then lowers the acquisition costs, even without anything that's like hyper dynamic in its connectability.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the key outcomes of service optimization anyway. So it all goes like, okay, you save time, you optimize, you start investing more, be it in your services or training, etc., etc. All of that ends up in higher quality. That builds loyalty. That should be building repeat bookings that are direct. And there you go, right? And then if at that point, if you add on that data layer, if you have that data available in real time, that's exactly where you then maximize your net, price per guest. So, and that would be the holy grail. Very simple, Adam. There's your formula. You see, we've
Yeah,
kind of
no,
laid it out already. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
already there, and then it's just only 1,000 hours of work to actually implement that.
Exactly. Yeah,
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 only.
yeah, yeah.
So we're coming to you in early October, and we have to circle back to the Mews acquisition. Tell us about how this came about and what it means for the industry.
Yeah, so this acquisition really came about on us and Mews working together now for many years, super successfully, um, and for really driving great value together for our customers. So, have to say that Mews was one of the main partners so far in the PMS sense, and some of the customers that we onboarded together over the past few years really saw amazing, amazing, amazing results, and that's one of the important aspects. The other important aspect is that, since years, us looking at them looking at us, it's two companies that are operating in a very, very similar way. So it's all based on like a vision of what's the future of hospitality, how should it look like. It should be driven by people. Staff are at the center of it. We have visions that are super similar in terms of how hospitality looks like, how it's operated, what drives success, and how to build that. And really, for us, I think on both sides, it just felt natural to come together and to do that together. So I think there is a big kudos and respect to be set for Richard and Matt from the side of Muse, to recognizing the importance of operations and specifically housekeepers, as Flexkeeping is recognized predominantly as a housekeeping software, and we're happy about that. We are happy to represent the housekeeping crew, because it's the underdog of the industry, but at the same time the heart of the industry. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So we're happy about that. And so the kudos and respect goes because they recognize that this is the key part of the industry going forward as well. And I think that is setting the tone of what's to come. That just sets the tone that at Muse we are now about really to shape and transform the future of hospitality. And as we've talked before, staffing is one of the major problems. We were out to resolve that, to change how the future looks like in operations. I guess by joining the Muse crew, we're just gonna do that on a much larger scale, and that's what I'm looking super forward to. So to just transform hospitality.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the partnerships, and one other aspect to all hospitality technology is it's not just about the features; it's also about the interface for not just for guests but for teams as well. And when a server, a housekeeper is on the fly, they need something that's highly intuitive. So I'm wondering, how have you considered the end users of your technology, the housekeepers, into Flexkeeping? And then what does that mean for the future of feature design?
Yeah, exactly. That's such a great question, Adam. Because so here. here's where me being a housekeeper was kind of very, very key to how we've built the interface from the get go. So, us from the beginning, our philosophy of why we've even started to build Flexkeeping was because we wanted to make the daily jobs of housekeepers and other staff members easier. We honestly wanted to do that because they are doing a really, really tough job. So the way we did that is that we always had this philosophy of, okay, technology needs to be shadowing people. So you should like think about it like it needs to, because you need to interact with it, you should never be stopped at your work. And one of the obvious way of doing that is by just creating a super easy interface. So that was the thing number one for Flexkeeping since day one, to just have the interface as nice and beautiful and seamless as possible. Few clicks and that's it. How this is being reflected or how we are seeing it today is by I don't know if you've seen, last year we released the first version of our Flexi AI, which is an AI assistant. Which elementary, what it does is it enables you to only speak to Flexkeeping in your own native language, and then the system does the rest. You know, so that means that wherever you're from, you just say, hey, guest from 102, they really like champagne, let's book it on their account for next time. You know, it could also be a repeat kind of task, or let's say guests need an extra pillow, please deliver it by 4 p.m., and the system will understand, structure, send and schedule the task for the next time. And this is the key differentiator. So this is how we are thinking of the future, right? So staff are multilingual, multicultural, different tech literacy, and this is, for example, where AI can be a huge game changer on that aspect as well. So, just to come back to your initial point, Adam, I think that user interface is absolutely a key aspect of making any service optimization system successful and to drive results that you want to drive with it.
So I just want to unpack what you've talked about your future features with Flexi AI. So this is in essence, it's conversational housekeeping or conversational work orders. The term hasn't been defined, but essentially, somebody's able to talk into their native language. It's speech to text, and then from there, that text is converted to probably to English or just automatically interpreted, and then the semantics of that is pulled out, and that data can then be parsed out into within Flexkeeping into individual ticketing or work orders, or it can be called up from the guest profile to either add to the guest profile or pull out additional information to create new tickets. Is that sort of summarizing what the workflow is?
Exactly. So at the moment, what we do at the moment is we can actionize any, yeah, actually all of those cases. Yeah. What it will be able in the future is far more than that. So what we've envisioned always is exactly like kind of you described it, is like a conversational companion, if you want, someone you can just talk to. This is how you have something that literally just shadows you, and you can go beyond only, let's say, reactionable or repetitive tasks such as extra pillows or the AC needs fixing, which is the most common use cases. Yeah, definitely, we need to enable staff to see and listen, and then be also the drivers of personalization going forward, and that can tap into guest profiles, that can tap into preferences, that can tap into any aspect of operations. Because that's the key. I think that true hospitality happens kind of in every corner of the hotel. It happens at breakfast, it happens in the room when you're cleaning the room, it happens at the front office. And the key to better experiences and to more personalization and all of that is to enable staff to just tell that super simply, share that super simply with everyone else, and then have the system helping you out with understanding and actually, actionizing that. So it's super super exciting where this will be going in the future. Yeah, for sure.
It's huge because it saves time, and it makes it so you can more easily onboard team members. They feel more comfortable because they don't need to understand some DOS looking system and plugging individual things. And that's what they don't want. They want to be front facing and on the fly going like this, just speaking into a machine, and it can automatically interpret it. Um, so one other thing we have to talk about here, and you mentioned this feature, is the movement towards more flexible working arrangements. You look at the original breed of sauces of service optimization systems, and it was essentially digitalizing the paper and pen without changing the underlying business process of having your daily huddle or your morning meeting at 7:30, giving your room assignments, and then letting the team all get started all at once. And now
Exactly.
what we're seeing is, okay, well, why do we need to have all of our housekeepers start at 8 a.m. or for turn down service start at 6 p.m.? Let's make it more flexible. If you know a room doesn't need to be cleaned till 9 p.m., you could give it to somebody who's more of a night owl. Can you
Yeah.
describe what this progression is and what are some of the features that are enabling this?
Yeah. Adam, I would perhaps zoom out a little bit to answer that question, because it's like, so it really taps into the problem of staffing at large in the industry, and also in the kind of changing preferences and needs also of the new generations of staffing, and then all the technological impact. So what I want to say is that, so on one hand, so staff are scarce, so there's not enough staff. That's on one hand. Then the needs are like, people want to have flexibility, right? People don't want to work 8 to 4, and that's the same also for housekeeping, any other industry. The third thing is that, as you said, like a day has 24 hours, but today, actually, most services, especially again in housekeeping, are being done 8 to 4. There's maybe one housekeeper in the afternoon shift, and that's it. So that also means there's so much unused time every day that you could still continue those services. Then there comes AI and robotics and other systems into the play of the future operational landscape, right? So what's going to drive tasks? What's going to execute tasks in the future? Um, all of that needs to be looked at together if you're looking at what flexible staffing or scheduling means in the future. So if you're looking at only people and people executing tasks, definitely. So then these are those two aspects. So how much time does one individual have in a day, and how much time does a day have, right? So you can have a person that is only available to do 1 hour in a day, and that can be assigned in any of the 24 hours. Then there's another layer to this, which is that, let's say in housekeeping again, a cleaning doesn't necessarily mean only one room as a complete function. It can also be a sequence of tasks. It can also mean, I don't know, vacuuming, changing linens. It can mean public area cleaning. It's so there's so many aspects that you can break down or just flexivize if you want.
Flexivize. I like that. New word.
But you see, Adam, where the key changer is. The key changer is to manage this. This is one of the huge problems why this was also probably not done in the past, because you need to be able to forecast and automate scheduling and planning of that. If you don't have that, it's impossible. It's like, and this brings me to another aspect of the system of flexkeeping that is super crucial for hospitality, for hotels, drawing more revenue, which is that, how do you make more money out of the current capacity? We've seen many examples of operations in the past years where they just don't want to sell more, even if they would be able to, because they are not sure if they're going to be able to service it. So upselling is such an example, or selling the same room multiple times per day. And the source problem of that is because, again, you don't know if you're going to be staffed enough. You don't know if you have enough resources, and you don't know how to plan it in your 8, 9, or 10 days, hours of operation. So this is where the whole combo is kicking in. So you need to look at the day as 24 hours. You need to look as people being able to work differently, and then you need to be able to automate that. And this is what makes it exciting, and this is what's going to also change very much how we are staffing, how we are resourcing, and how we are revenue managing the properties.
So the grand strategy here is rethink the day in terms of 24 hours and variable or flexible shifts. Number two, get a system that can actually do that. Number three, start rethinking how we're engaging employees on a gig economy scale or basis. And then number 4 is rethink your revenue models around having better service
Not just better service.
or more service, more different types of
It's
service.
about
Yeah.
more service. Exactly.
Yeah.
More service. Yeah. Yeah.
And you mentioned robotics. Do you ever see a day when Optimus will be cleaning rooms?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a matter of when.
It's been the feedback of the industry for the past 10 years was like, yeah, your system can do everything, but it can't clean a room. Well, guess what? Right?
Yeah.
That's going to change. And I don't think we're that much away from that point.
Well, would you dare to venture a guess at the time or year when that's going to happen?
Ooh, this is, who knows? The future is big, and who knows what we're going to do with it.
Awesome. Luka, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a fantastic conversation and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Gain Momentum podcast. To stay up to date, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Gain Advisors, head to gainadvisors.com.